Hi y'all, welcome to Book Talks with Kiki. I'm Kiki, let's talk about books. This is episode 4 of me tracking my progress through reading down my physical TBR. A couple months ago, I started this project in May of 2025. I had 47 books on my physical TBR, and for me, that is a large number, and I really just did not like that. I was reading a lot through my library, which is fantastic, but because I was reading so much through my library and I was still buying physical books, I wasn't really getting to those physical books as much as I wanted to. Hence the birth of this project. So here on screen you can see my physical TBR spreadsheet. I do this because I do not have any bookcases in my filming space. They are in another room and I'm not going to lug in all of the books in my physical TBR for the visual, so I just have this spreadsheet to help us, well, really for me to track, and so you have a nice visual to see where we are. And like I said, I started this project with 47 books on my physical TBR. This is episode 4. So at the end of last month's episode, which would have been July, we ended the month with 30 books on my TBR. So if we look here at this summary, you can see so far I've read 24 books. I have DNF'd, so started but then did not finish another 4 books. And then since May through the end of July, I have added 11 books to my TBR tracker. So that leaves us with the TBR of 30, and that is going to be our starting number for this month. And then here you can just see everything in green I've read, everything in orange I have DNF'd, and everything that has no color besides this blue TBR color I still need to read. And I think the first book I'm going to read is actually this one, Everything's Fine by Cecilia Rabess, and it's just been staring at me. For some reason it's calling my name, so I'm going to read this one first. So I will let you know what the update is with Everything's Fine in just one second. Hi y'all, so I have finished Everything's Fine by Cecilia Rabess, so I wanted to talk about it. How would I describe this book? Okay, I would say Everything's Fine is half romance-leaning literary fiction. Storygraph has this tagged as literary fiction. I would also say there is a strong element of romance here, but it's not your conventional, I would say, contemporary romance. So that's why I kind of settled on romance-leaning literary fiction. So it's half that, and then it's also half comedic tragedy. And we follow a Black woman, Jess, our main narrator, falling in love with her white Republican classmate turned co-worker Josh. They meet for the first time in college in 2008. So Barack Obama has just been elected for his first term as president. Jess is very excited by this. She makes a comment in the student newspaper about how excited she was to vote for him and just to know that America had its first Black president. Josh is also interviewed for that same student newspaper, and he's like, I don't really understand why everyone's so excited because we're still in an economic downturn and electing a Democrat's not going to help us with that. And from that first moment on, they have a very complicated relationship. Jess does not like him, and that's not helped by the few interactions they have in college after that. Then they graduate and they both get jobs at Goldman Sachs as first year, I don't know, financial analysts or whatever they do, investment bankers, who knows. And that really is when the relationship kind of changes. They're both a little bit older. Now they're in, the real world and are working together, and Jess is very isolated from the rest of her team, from the rest of the people on this floor. She's the only Black woman on her entire office floor. Josh really shows her kindness and the only person that she knows, and is very nice to her in ways that some of the other people on her team aren't. That is what really allows them to start forming a friendship. Take this existing relationship that they had between them and turn that into a real friendship and a bond. The story begins in 2008. Jess graduates maybe 2012. They kind of start to form this relationship over the course of a couple of years. And then 2016 happens. And suddenly these political differences that kind of just seemed theoretical or fun debate that you could have and just feel like the emotion and the intellect bouncing between them become a lot more tangible. And they seem a lot more, just I think as many people have felt, that they seem to have really widened them and separated them more and more from each other. And so Jess has to kind of start struggling with that as a Black woman dating a white conservative MAGA Republican now, right? He supports Donald Trump, and she is very anti-Donald Trump. Can this work? Can their love conquer their politics, pretty much? That is the spoiler-free summary. I will say, overall, I liked this book way more than I thought I was. I'm not gonna lie, I bought this off a book outlet probably in February, and my tastes have definitely changed since then, but it was $5 or $6, and I did kind of want to challenge myself with this. I remember when I read it on book outlet, the back, it sounded interesting, but I was also like, is this really gonna be something I'm interested in? A kind of contemporary-ish romance about 2016 politics, I don't want to read that. But I bought it, and then I did pick this up specifically this month because I thought I was going to DNF it. And then I finished it. I was actually very surprised by how much I was into it. Now, is it the best book I've ever read? No. Was it kind of very frustrating at times? Extremely frustrating. But I would give this like a 3.5 to 3.75 stars. I think on Storygraph, I gave it a 3.5. You know, it exceeded my expectations, and maybe that was because my expectations were so low, but I did not at all think that I would be able to get through this. And not only did I get through it, I enjoyed my time with it. Like, I really did like my time with it for the most part. So that is my recommendation on it. So I will say here, Jess is a hot mess. Like, a hot mess. When I was saying I was getting so frustrated with this book, I was getting extremely frustrated with Jess, particularly in like, I think part 2, there's 4 parts to this book. She is at times incredibly juvenile, which you understand because the bulk of this story takes place when she's probably 21, 22, 23. So yeah, she is incredibly juvenile because she is still a juvenile, right? She is annoying. She is hypocritical at times. However, I will say the author is definitely aware of Jess's flaws. And that is not always the case with certain authors, where they will write a character one way and then just seemingly refuse to acknowledge how terrible this character actually is, or like pretend like these flaws don't exist, like they can't see them, or they think that they're always in the right. And I definitely get the sense that this author was like, yes, Jess is a hot mess. I know it, you know it. I'm going to make her annoying and hypocritical, and these are her flaws, and I'm aware of them, and that is what we are working on, which I appreciated. Jess isn't a victim here of Josh like bait and switching her, right? It's not like she has an idea of who Josh is politically and then he does like a full 180. We see all the ways that she justifies and aligns herself to the reality of the situation and the reality of Josh's politics. The red flags were there from the get-go. She knew from the get-go what she was getting into. It's more like she was willing to accept it to a certain point, and now she has to continue to ask herself, like, is this my point? Is this the line that I'm not going to cross anymore, even though I still love Josh, or not? Like, that is what's in front of her, which I appreciated that. Like, I liked that the author didn't make her a victim. Like, she's contributing to the situation that she finds herself in. You know, at the end of the day, I think there are many people out here like Jess, not necessarily just like Black women, but just people in general who try to make these kind of intra-political relationships work, and what that means for their own morals and ethics and their own beliefs. I think despite how annoying I found Jess, she feels so real. Like, she is a real person, warts and all. And I really appreciate that, and I kind of applaud the author for her ability to capture that. Yeah, I just found the author's writing strong. I thought Jess's voice was realistic, and I was just overall interested in Jess and Josh's dynamic. Like, Josh is kind of interesting. I don't have a lot of opinions on him, believe it or not. He's very witty and intelligent, and I do believe in the relationship of Jess and Josh. Like, I believe Josh believes that he loves Jess, and I believe Jess believes that she loves Josh. And that was enough for me to root for them. I was like, they're gonna figure it out, you know. I will also say this book made me sob like a baby. And I can't really tell you why it made me sob without getting into spoilers. I will say the situation that made me cry and really impacted me emotionally was very separated from the main plot of this book, which is Jess and Josh. I did kind of consider that it was an easy way for the author to draw out a depth of emotion from the reader that was otherwise missing from Jess's like main storyline, because it was very emotional and it did impact Jess, but it had really nothing to do with Jess and Josh. I would say, you know, trigger warning for cancer. Again, I know Storygraph has like trigger warnings that you can, or content warnings that you can give for people. So I would maybe check out the content warnings on some Storygraph reviews for this book, and that should be enough to let you know if you can stomach this. And I'm gonna be honest, I did not see the end coming. The way that Rabess ends this book is like, gosh, again, it's extremely frustrating, but I felt like it was very real. That's why I kind of say this is like, it's romance leaning, but it's not really romance. If you're picking this up expecting romance, you are going to be very disappointed. I just think it's interesting that I feel like does a really good job and effort of portraying like a very modern real life situation and how it impacts people's relationships. So yeah, overall, 3.5 stars. That was Everything's Fine by Cecilia Rabess. Rabess? One of those is correct, hopefully. After Everything is Fine, I read The Moon is Down by John Steinbeck. So this is, I think, number 7. I think this is number 7 or 8. There'll be something on the screen that tells you what number it is of John Steinbeck books I've read. Yeah, it was very good. I really liked it. It's a very short, like, novella, short story. It's only about 100 pages, but it takes place in a fictionalized, never really named town in a never really named country that is being invaded by another never really named country. But let's be honest, it is pretty much a thinly veiled, I don't even think it could be called an allegory. It is pretty much Germany invading a country, and is supposed to be a direct situation of the European Nazi occupied countries during World War II. It's not very subtle, and it really was not supposed to be that subtle. In fact, he pretty much wrote this with the CIA, or the early CIA. I think this was like pre-CIA, but Steinbeck wrote this with the US government as a piece of propaganda to fight against Nazi Germany. So anyway, we follow this kind of fictionalized town. Pick whatever European country you want. Although I would say like they're very, very heavy like snows and winters. So maybe like somewhere more north, like Norway, Denmark, that kind of area. And it just looks at these very regular people as they try to live under this occupied regime and as they try to resist. It's kind of similar in a way to Cannery Row. You just focus on this one geographic area and you just follow maybe these 4 or 5 interesting characters through their lives. It's a lot less funny than Cannery Row because, you know, you do have civilians being shot and there's a lot of paranoia and like just very high tension, but just very similar where we have 6 or 7 main characters that we kind of check in on over the course of a year of their life in this kind of occupied town. And I really liked it. I think what's most interesting about this book is like less so what's actually in the contents itself, but it's more so like the meta context of this book, specifically how it was indeed, you know, illegally published and spread and sold in Nazi occupied countries. Like I said, specifically, I think they talked about Norway, Denmark, Italy, France even. Like it was pretty much everywhere in Europe at this time. And after the war, once people could actually like talk about what it was like, many said that this book was very accurate and was very helpful to them. It was a comfort to them. So I kind of say like this is like war propaganda done right. It's a Steinbeck, you know, it's got Steinbeck's writing. It's very good. It's got Steinbeck's characters. You really come to root for them, even though you don't have a lot of pages with them. It's interesting how the Nazi stand-ins are portrayed. And what it really showed was, hey, these Germans are not unbeatable god kings. Like we can beat them. They are men. At the end of the day, all of their crimes aside, which yes, there were many terrible crimes, but he was really focused on just saying, look, they don't want to be here either. They miss their families as well. They can feel the way that everyone hates them. And that has to burrow into a man's soul. And it's, like I said, it's not sympathetic, but it's just they're humans. And I think at the time this came out, a lot of people had critiques about their portrayals. Like a lot of people in America, a lot of the critics here were like, they're portraying them too sympathetically. But then again, you take into account the actual opinions of the people who were reading this novel under Nazi occupation, and they appreciated not the representation, but they appreciated how these soldiers were depicted, and they felt it was much more real life and not so hokey. And that was something like I picked up on even before I read, and a lot of this information that I'm picking up, I read in the introduction to The Moon is Down with the Penguin Classic edition that I had. So I read the introduction after I finished the book. I never read the introductions first. And I was picking that up even when I was reading it. I just thought the way that he depicted this group was very interesting. Overall, I really liked the book. I thought for such a short novel, primarily written with the goal to kind of increase morale in Nazi occupied countries, that it has a lot of, you know, heart, a lot of beauty, and it's just a good Steinbeck book, you know? So I will put my new rankings of my Steinbeck novels up here probably, so you guys can get a sense of where I'd rank this, but it's definitely my 3rd or 4th favorite Steinbeck book I've read so far. If you haven't read The Moon is Down, I would recommend it. It's pretty interesting. Then after The Moon is Down, I read Oh Pioneers by Willa Cather. This is another pretty short one. It's only like 150 pages in this Barnes & Noble copy. This takes place on the plains of Nebraska. We kind of mainly focus in on this young woman named Alexandra Bergson who inherits her father's farm, like I said, in Nebraska. We just kind of get a glimpse into her life. It's not a full-blown romance, but there's definitely romance elements in this. But mainly we're focused on just Alexandra and the events that are impacting her life. I'm not sure if there's much more about this plot that I could tell you without actually going into specific details and spoiling things. So I will say I really love the character of Alexandra. She is so interesting to me. She is very well respected in her family and in the greater community. She is acknowledged as a very intelligent woman, a very good businesswoman, and she has her kind of own full life of independence, which was something I was honestly not prepared to read going into this book. I just found I really liked Alexandra as a character. I thought she's probably one of like the best female characters I've read in a while. I just was 100% like pulling for her and everything. Yeah, overall, this was good. The writing is very strong. I can understand this is my first Willa Cather, and I can see why she has a staying power and that her writing is very good. I will be very honest though, extremely honest. This book, for the most part, kind of bored me. It's not the most boring book I've ever read, but there's just something about it that the story was not, and again, there's not really much of a story beyond, at least that I can like really say, beyond moments in Alexandra Bergenson's life, you know? And while I really liked Alexandra, there was just something about the pacing of this that was very slow, extremely slow. A lot of descriptions of the plains, which were beautiful, but I also didn't really care. And it was just kind of boring to me. Now, the last, I would say, third of this book definitely got more interesting. Once I started to see like what the conflict of this book was going to be, I was like, ooh, okay. And the end did kind of like grab me back a bit, but it's just a beautifully written book. That's really it. It's a beautifully written book. I think there are some really touching and great lines in this, specifically around like death and people returning to the earth physically, like their bodies like physically decaying into the earth. I thought that was very interesting. I don't really have much to say about this book. I think this is like a 3.75 for me, maybe a 3.5. The writing is very good. And I do want to read more of Willa Cather. In fact, the first book of hers I wanted to read was Death Comes for the Archbishop. And I also know that My Antonia is one of her popular novels. I really want to read more of her later work. I just wonder if it might connect with me or be less boring to me. I mean, like I said, the writing itself is very strong. It's a very short book, and I had how many highlights? Over 73 highlights in this very short book of just quotes that I thought were beautiful, or I thought the way that she really captured emotion was very interesting. Like, I really loved Alexandra's relationship with her youngest brother, Emil. I thought they were just so cute together, or I thought Emil was so cute, especially as a little baby, and I could really feel her love for him. Alexandra herself, I just think is a very fascinating, very interesting, very great lead character. So I liked a lot of it. I just think overall, like the story itself was perhaps like not the one that really captured my heart or my interest. It was a little bit too slow for my taste. Like, it's already a short book and it probably could have been 15 pages shorter. And that's where we are with O Pioneers. After O Pioneers, I have picked up The Good Lord Bird by James McBride. I'm literally just about 50% of the way through this one. So I will come back to you with more updates when I finish. Hi again. So for you, it will have been just a couple of seconds since my last update, but for me, it's been several weeks. Yeah, we have a lot to cover, but also not that much to cover. I will not bury the lead. August has been a rough reading month for me, not just with the quantity of books that I'm reading. I've really slowed down because a lot has been going on in my life, but also not necessarily the quality. I wouldn't say the quality is that bad. It's just I'm not reading a lot of books that I absolutely love. It's been a struggle to finish some of these books. Even if I could understand and like appreciate the writing and know that it was good, I was still a lot of times deeply bored and just not wanting to pick up a book. So between just not really feeling it with the books, my personal life being a mess, work and personal life have just been so busy, just haven't had a lot of time to read. It's been a bit of a struggle month for me, I'm gonna be honest. Last we talked, I was about 50% of the way through The Good Lord Bird by James McBride. I finished this book. Honestly, I don't have a lot of thoughts on this book now. I finished this on August 16th, so it's already been about 2.5 weeks. This was one of the books where I mentioned where I could appreciate the writing. I could tell that it was a good book. It was a good story. I just very much struggled to care. I think for me, I was not prepared for the tone of this book. This is a very comedic book. It is very kind of nonchalant, but it's telling about in my opinion, a very serious person, a very serious topic. The Good Lord Bird follows a slave boy as he is quote unquote abducted, unwillingly brought along on this adventure with the real life well-known abolitionist John Brown. It follows our main character Henry, who John Brown mistakes to be a girl because he is very short and prepubescent, and so for practically the entire book, everyone thinks that he's a girl, and he just kind of lives this lie because it gets him out of all of the fights and battles and rebellions going on with John Brown. Like I said, it's very comedic because John Brown is, at least at first, and I would say for 80% of the book, John Brown is painted in a very like crazy way. He's just kind of crazy. Obviously, the author picked this tone for a reason, and he was very good at achieving this tone. I'm just saying personally, I didn't love the tone. There were times where I was deeply confused about why he wanted to portray John Brown and Frederick Douglass in such a unflattering light. Eventually, I would say John Brown came fully around to like being a little bit more well respected by our main POV of Henry. Frederick Douglass, I don't know, like, listen, this is my ignorance speaking. Like, I don't know if he really was that much of a womanizer and philanderer. I don't know. It's a point of view, it's a point of view. And I can't say that that is a wrong point of view to have, but I just was like, both John Brown and Frederick Douglass are painted in a very kind of negative light in this book. This follows John Brown all the way up to the Harper's Ferry raid, which goes wrong for him, but I didn't like know a lot of the details of how that actually happened, and if this book is even 60% historically accurate in his positioning and how the town responded and how long he was able to hold out and the hostages and things like that. I feel like I learned a lot. The writing from James McBride is, like I said, it's very good writing. I can tell why this like won a lot of awards. I was disappointed. I was a little bit bored at times. I thought it was very repetitive. Certain things were just very repetitive. Henry escapes and has like one adventure for a chapter away from John Brown, and then through some series of unfortunate events, comedic timing, bad luck, whatever, he comes back into orbit of John Brown and he's like, damn. And that happens probably like 6 times. There are just other moments where things are very repetitive. Like he keeps mentioning a lot how John Brown still thinks that he's a woman and these people still think I'm a woman and these people and I just thought this book could have probably been cut down by 20 to 25 pages. Like that's just always one of my critiques of all books. It's just too long. Yeah, I would still recommend this book. I just think it wasn't the right book for me at the right time. Like I said, it just wasn't the book that was like really making me interested in continuing to read it, which I was very surprised by. I don't know how I was bored reading about John Brown and all of the various escapades he was on, especially with this depiction of John Brown, because he is like very entertaining. You're just like, what is he going to do next? What is he going to say next? I really did enjoy the running bit of how long he prays. Like he's like, okay, time for a quick prayer before we go off on this very important battle that we have to get there at exactly at this time. And the next line will be like, he prayed for 3 hours. And the men wandered off and played cards until he finally opened his eyes again and said amen. I liked that recurring bit. I thought that was very funny. But overall, I think I'm giving this book a 3.5 or 3.75. So after The Good Lord Bird, I actually read a John Steinbeck. I read Travels with Charlie in Search of America by John Steinbeck, but that was not a book that was on my physical TBR because I was like, I just need a Steinbeck right the second. And that was the first one that I could get at my library because I was like, I need something to pull me back in because I am struggling right now. So that wasn't part of my physical TBR. I would give that one a 3-star. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. There were some really high highs, but some very low lows in my personal opinion. If you're a Steinbeck fan, you should definitely read this just to kind of get a better sense of his real life worldview and politics and like the way he thinks. I thought it was very interesting. Again, some high highs with him, some low lows. I will just quickly say I love Sim Steinbeck when he said that he was like massaging the feet of his wife at the Kennedy inauguration. I was like, okay, that's a weird tidbit to give us, but that's Sim Steinbeck. I don't think we get many of those. Anti-cop Steinbeck continues to go on strong. He really is like, why aren't we punching cops in the face? And I didn't say it. Literally, John Steinbeck said it. He said it in this one. He said it in The Grapes of Wrath. Go look, go argue with him. Don't argue with me. I'm only telling you what he's saying. And this book, I haven't had a dog. My last dog passed away about 2 years ago now, and this book is like, okay, it's time to get another dog. I want another dog. I don't need like a poodle, whatever that Charlie was, but I want a dog so much right now. So that's what this book did for me. Okay, anyway, after that, to get back to my physical TBR, I was like, okay, I'm going to finally pick up the Book of Madness and Cures by Regina O'Melveny. So funny story with this book, not really, but I went to my local Books A Million several times over the course of the summer, and I just always saw this book there for 2 or 3 visits in a row. This book was in the bargain aisle, and every single time I picked it up and I looked at it and I was like, maybe. I think the cover's really great. In the back, it's like a historical fiction book set in 16th century Venice with a woman practitioner of medicine. So she's like a woman doctor. I thought that sounded interesting. She has to go on this quest across all of Italy and Europe to track down her father or something. And I was like, I don't know. But the cover was really interesting. And then one day, I don't know if you can see, $1.97. It went on sale for $1.97. I'm like, you're really going to pass up a $2 book? And it's in very good condition, because some of the books at Books A Million bargain aisle, there's a reason they're in the bargain aisle. It's in great condition. So for $2, I was like, heck yeah, I'll try it. Because I have this vision in my head that I'm going to pick up one of these books that no one's ever heard of. I've never heard anyone talk about this book, okay? And it's at the bargain aisle. It's only $2. I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to read it and I'm going to love it. I don't know. Like, I just think it's every reader's dream to like pick up a book that no one's ever heard of. You've never been recommended before. It really is just a random book that you see and you read it and you love it. I just think everyone, maybe I'm projecting, but I feel like everyone has to have that desire and that want to experience. So this was the book for me that I did this for. And I got 39 pages in. I will say this book is actually written very well. I was pleasantly surprised with some of the writing in this book. So this is just a quote on the fourth page. This is part of the prologue. I've since come to believe that the world is populated by multitudes of women sitting at windows inseparable from their surroundings. I myself spent many hours at a window on the Zenterere, waiting for my father's return, waiting for life to appear like one of those great ships that came to harbor, broad sails filled with the wind of Providence. I didn't know then that during those fugitive hours beneath the influence of the damp moon, I was already plotting my future in pursuit of the past. I'd grown transparent as the glass through which I peered, dangerously invisible even to myself. It was then I knew I must set my life in motion or I would disappear. So I read that. I was like, okay, alrighty, I like it. And then I read like the first 3 chapters and I was like, I'm bored. And I don't think it's this book's fault. It just was not going well. So unfortunately, I think this is just collateral damage to my mini reading slump in the month of August. I don't think I'm going to unhaul this book quite yet, even though I did DNF it. I'm going to mark it as a DNF officially in my Storygraph tracking app, but I am going to maybe keep this around and maybe I can try it again. But I'll be completely honest, the reviews on this thing are not great. I did look up these reviews to guess if I should like continue to read it. And again, it's not reviewed a whole lot on Storygraph. There's only 414 reviews, but its average rating is a 2.84. That's not great. And I saw that, and a lot of people just said like the writing was good. Like they said, I was actually surprised by how many beautiful lines this book had, but it was just boring. It was slow moving. The main character wasn't very interesting, things like that. So that is the sad story of the Book of Madness and Cures. After that, again, I don't know why I was doing this to myself at a certain point. It's my fault. I picked up A Love Song for Ricki Wilde by Tia Williams. Why would I pick this book up if I was already in a reading slump? I knew it was romance. I don't generally like romance. I don't know, okay? Don't ask me questions. I was in a rough mental space this month. This was another one I got at Books A Million bargain aisle, $8, pretty good condition. Again, I was pleasantly surprised when I read this book, or when I read the first, I got to page like 37 on this. I was pleasantly surprised when I read the first 37 pages. The writing was a lot better than I expected. I was expecting a lot of like the cringe writing that you get with contemporary romances. Sorry, not a dig. If you love contemporary romance, I'm really happy for you. I just don't always. And I said the same thing about Everything's Fine, where I was actually very pleasantly surprised when I started it. The writing did not like cringe me out with their romance or anything. And to be fair, Ricki and their love interest, I don't know, have not actually met yet. He's still stuck in the 1900s. It's like a time travel love story, themabob, Harlem Renaissance love connection through the ages, which sounded actually very interesting. That's why I would decide to pick this up, because I think I liked the idea of time travel love story type of thing. And here's the thing, the writing itself, her actual technical ability, Tia Williams' actual technical writing ability was pretty good. I did raise several eyebrows in the first chapter at how over the top and caricature-ish Ricki's family is. The Wildes are this very rich, very affluent Black family in Atlanta, and Ricki is one of, I think, 4 daughters, and all of her sisters are bitches. They are horrendous, and they're horrendous to her in front of her parents. Her parents don't give a dang. They're just your socialite stock characters. They really do only care about what she looks like to others outside of their family. And I'm not saying that that is not something that really happens a lot in families today. I 100% believe it is. I just struggle to believe it is ever this blatantly obvious. I think a lot of people tell themselves stories in their head about their behavior. So I don't think a lot of mothers would look at her and be like, you are an embarrassment to us if you do this job because you're useless and pointless and yada, 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 yada. Like, just the way it was so bluntly done. And I understand it was for comedic effect and she was trying to like establish a tone. I was just like, okay, this is going to be rough. And then Ricki is working as a receptionist at her father's funeral business because that is how the Wildes became so rich. This older woman comes in, she's 94, 97. Her husband just died. He was from this area. She wants to bury him here, but she lives in New York, actually in Harlem now. You know, Ricki was just comforting her and saying, I'm so sorry for your loss. They were talking about her life and with her husband, all of this. And she asks about Ricki for some reason. And Ricki's like, oh, well, I want to actually open up a flower shop. I need to find a place to open my flower shop. And for some reason, this woman is like, well, why don't you come up to Harlem and you can live in the apartment below mine. And then on the first floor, we have a space where you could have your flower shop. And I get it. Like, the book even says, like, you'll think this is ridiculous, but this has really happened and it was magic and it was fate and all of this stuff. Okay. They lampshaded it, but I still didn't. I'm still like, so just the setup itself, I was just not buying, and that's not Tia Williams' fault. It's my fault because Tia Williams is literally saying, this is what this book is going to be. So like, jump out now if you're not going to be down with it. And I was like, okay, I'll take my cue. I'm going to jump off now. I'm not down with it. However, I thought her actual writing itself, like, it was a little bit contrived, but it almost had to be. If I was not in such a reading slump, I probably would have read more of this. But I was in a reading slump and I was like, I really just don't want to waste my time with a book that I think I'm not going to rate higher than a 3.5 at the very best. So I DNF'd this book. I will also say one thing. Ricki Wilde, she said that she was going to name her flower shop Botany, Botany, Botany Flowers Lately. Okay? That's what she said she was going to call her flower shop. She's like, I found the perfect name. That. Okay? And then the next chapter, she's like, oh, I couldn't end up naming my flower shop that because you can't trademark a question. And listen, I have no idea. I've done no research on this. I'm like, it's not a true question. That's the joke. It's a pun. It's not botany flowers lately question. It's botany flowers lately. It's not a question. And then she was like, but that's okay because I found an even better name for a flower shop. Wild Things. And I said, that's not a good name it's not a terrible name for a flower shop, but that is not in any way, shape, or form a better name for a flower shop. I got very upset by this. I have now asked 2 different groups of people which they thought was a better name for a flower shop. And when I said botany flowers lately, like 3 people laughed out loud and they said that one. And I said, thank you. Like, that one's actually low-key genius. It did take me a while when I was reading the book to like put it together. I was like, those are just 3 random words. Like botany and flowers I get. Lately, I didn't get it. But then the 3rd or 4th time it appeared, I was like, oh my God, that's brilliant. What? So I have a beef with this book about that. All right, then the last book I read this month for my physical TBR, which I don't have a copy because it's just in that really big collection of John Steinbeck short stories, so I didn't bring that whole thing out here, but I did read Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. So I wasn't planning to, but I actually read 3 Steinbecks this month. The Moon is Down, Travels with Charlie, which wasn't part of my physical TBR, and then Of Mice and Men. Will pop up my new Steinbeck ranking. I don't know, I might come back to where I rank Of Mice and Men because I did consider putting it right below The Moon is Down in that 4th spot instead of the 3rd spot. Here's my problem with Of Mice and Men is the ending was spoiled for me. And I just think the first time you read it, not knowing the ending probably really helps because the entire time I was just like, I'm not going to get too emotionally connected to this character because I already know what's happening. However, Steinbeck is just so good at writing because I know he was manipulating me. Every single sentence, and I know that's what writing is in general, but specifically with Lenny, this character, he made Lenny to be like the most tragic character he could think of, right? Every single line that Lenny said was meant to kind of drive home how innocent and naive he is to the reader so that we could latch onto him, so that we could feel these protective emotions for him and really understand why George, sticks around with him. And I knew it was going to happen. I didn't know quite why it happened. And by it, I mean the end. Okay. I knew what was going to happen with Lenny and George, and I just didn't quite know the circumstances for it. But again, Steinbeck plants those seeds. He foreshadows a lot in this. So you're like, oh, it's just this slow sense of dread. And just the way that he is like, I'm going to manipulate you. You're going to know I'm manipulating you and you're still going to cry because you're a little bitch. And I'm like, you didn't need to do that to me, Steinbeck. Like, I am. I will say there is a character like Lenny in Cannery Row, Frankie, and I think I did cry a little bit more with what happened with Frankie in Cannery Row. Even though Frankie was like the minorest of minor characters, he's around for 2 or 3 scenes. He has maybe, I don't know, 3 pages devoted to him in that novella. But just because I wasn't prepared for what happened with Frankie, I think it hit me even more. It hit me even more with Frankie than it did with Lenny. So I do think that's a little bit why this book is a little bit lower for me. But it's still just Steinbeck, very good. I think this is probably his strongest on pure character and emotion. On pure just yanking emotion out of the reader. This, I think, of Mice and Men is the strongest I've read so far of his. And when it comes to really focusing on one relationship between 2 characters, really excellent work done to really build up George and Lenny and their relationship and why they love each other and connect with each other. Yes, of Mice and Men, I think this is going to be probably like a 4.5, 4.25 stars. Very, very good. And I'm glad that I could kind of finish the month with Of Mice and Men. Now, I have started yesterday, so August 30th, this one. Again, I don't know, I'm in a slump, and I'm like, let me just read the biggest book on my shelf. Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. But I've been really wanting to read this one for a very long time, so I'm trying to pick books that I'm really genuinely excited about. And I am about 27% of the way through this, which is 250 pages in, but this is like an 850 page book. So we still got a long way to go on that. I definitely will not finish it for August, but check in on September's physical TBR video next month when I upload that for more thoughts on Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, which I keep wanting to call Dr. Strange and Mr. Norrell because of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which I'm 100% sure Susanna Clarke was trying to reference in this title. I don't know, but I assume so. So I keep like messing up that title. All right. So that means I read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 books off of my physical TBR, and then I DNF'd 2, so I got those 2 also off of my physical TBR list, which means that at the end of August, I have a total TBR left of 23. Now, I can already tell you that's probably not going to stay that low for very long because it's a long weekend here in the States. It's Labor Day weekend. I feel a bookshop trip coming on. So that 23 is probably not going to stick around for long, but it's good that even though I thought this month was very weak for me, reading-wise, I did still make progress on my physical TBR. I'm going to be completely honest. I want to get rid of some of these books that I got at like the start of this year because I think I was just, like I said, I did a lot of what I did with the Book of Madness and Cures where I was like, well, I don't really know if I'm going to like this book, but I want to pick it up now for cheap because what if I really did love it? Like, wouldn't that be a great story where I just got this book for cheap and I'd never heard of it and then I loved it? And unfortunately, that just made me take chances on books that, in retrospect, I don't think I'm actually really gonna like, and I don't want to waste my time reading. So I think next month I might start the month try the first chapter or 2 of several of these books. And if I'm not immediately hooked, I'm going to just DNF them and just get them off of my physical TBR list so that I can really focus. I have a lot of books on here that I am truly excited about and I really, really want to get to, but I feel like since a lot of them are newer, I have to like still go back to some of those books that have been in my physical TBR, longer, and I don't love that, and I just kind of want to have fun. All right, so that's going to be it for this video. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe, like if you'd like to do any of that. I'm Kiki. I've been talking about books. It's time to stop talking about books so I can go back to reading some. Bye.